So we return to the Bath Tumulus Sepulchre in autumn 1455. We see a great expansive underground tomb with walls lined, the burial space is carved out for the dead. The long stone path leading across the chamber to this great multi-step dais. The path lit with the braziers burning unholy green flames, and revealing the ground, which is covered in now the hundreds of dead, the piles of their bones, whom only moments ago were standing battling. At the top of this dais is a pale blonde, apparently Breton man, partially covered in wrappings, and to his side the Cappadocian elder Dionysus, with his own small glowing embers for eyes. At the entrance of the sepulchre, Cormac de Courcy is seen knelt down, his entire left arm and right hand burned down to ash, and his back opened up with a festering slash of a wound, and a bloodied sword fallen to the ground beside him. The three Giovanni and the Sedite, Anafnemtet, stand close by, briefly stunned by the appearance of this Breton out of the tomb. Anafnemtet appears grievously wounded, with his own multiple gashes cut deep across his arm, his neck, and into his ribcage. Looking intense, almost feral, we see Anafnemtet turn back, and a long and wicked forked tongue whips out once more into the air and rends through the open wound on Cormac. And coming through the other side, it retracts, and Cormac collapses to ground dust and ash before your eyes, Elined. Despite your attempts to subdue them with your own control of the shadows, the group flees the sepulchre, disappearing into the darkness back up the steps ahead of you. And you, hot on their heels, begin chasing them. What is going through Elend's mind right now?
Sadness over the loss of a comrade, but more than anything else, anger. A hot, seething anger. Her only intention for chasing them down is to cut down the person who did this to him. And if I am close enough, I will attempt to grab enough with the shadow tendrils.
Alright. You continue your trajectory across the battlefield. Even a cursory glance behind you would reveal this newcomer, wrapped in bandages from the tomb, has fallen to his knees, appearing weak and tired. Dionysus remains at his side. It seems no one's coming with you.
I'm still in my shadow form, correct?
Yes. You continue on, following them up?
Unless they make it to a carriage or some horses, because there's no way she can keep up with that.
They have a little bit of a distance on you, a little bit of a lead, but you chase them up, going up the long and dark stone staircase. You can faintly tell as you begin to rise that there's some glimmer of light up ahead. Perhaps they're not as far as you thought, moving slower than you thought. Perhaps this is the light of a lantern. You make it back to the surface of Bath Tumulus, and you can hear the echo of the fast and frantic Italian being exchanged most of the way. Mostly men, but you hear a woman's voice occasionally. And as you reach the entrance that that descends down, you hear outside the sound of reins and horses neighing. And just outside, as the light of the moon reveals the field around Bath Tumulus, you can see several of them are preparing to depart soon. It looks like they have brought their own horses. You are still inside the tomb right now, looking out, so your view is somewhat limited.
It is just them. There are no reinforcements outside.
You don't see any. Although, again, your limited view from inside doesn't show you the entire area.
Would I be able to get close enough within time in order to restrain enough, or are they going to be gone by the time I get there?
You don't see Anafnemtet yet. You would have to exit the chamber. You don't think they're very far, just maybe around the corner.
She will do so, but she will stick to the shadows.
Okay. So you wish to try and go outside, but not be detected immediately?
Exactly. She wishes to stick to the shadows if possible.
Alright, give me a dex stealth, and I think in the form Tenebrous Avatar, you have a natural advantage to hiding. So I'm just going to make this difficulty 5. Alright, 1 success. So you kind of snake your way out of the entrance and into the grassy fields surrounding Bath Tumulus, sticking close to the wall in the darkness of the shadow that the wall provides. And as you exit, you can see off to your side where the carriage that brought your supplies and your horses, Anafnemtet seems to have buried his face into a now laying down horse. And he rears up his head, turning around and revealing the blood coming down from the corners of his mouth. And it's at that time that you hear a voice in Italian. There, it seemed to have followed. You realize it's Ludovico calling you out, to the attention of the others. Do you wish to die like your friend? You can see he's already mounted his horse. The 2 other Giovanni that have accompanied him are by their horses, but have stopped. And all are looking to you now.
I am uncertain as to if she can speak in this form, considering she is technically not physical.
It's a good question. I don't recall reading anything about you being unable to. We'll say that you can. And I'll have you make a Wits Alertness, difficulty 8. Alright, 4 success. Do you have any specialties there?
None that count, I don't think.
Okay, still 4 successes is a lot. You can see even as Ludovico draws your attention, Anafnemtet, by your carriage and this clearly exsanguinated horse, has slowly drawn out an amulet from around his neck. It almost looks like a black polished gem of some kind, almost looks like a person. And you can see he's smearing something over it as he speaks quietly to it. This looks very occult to you, and you don't sense it's...
Yeah, no, restraining him.
Okay. You realize this quickly. I'll let you just roll for that.
Let's see, that's manipulation occult, difficulty 7, to summon the arms at first. That summons 3 tendrils, which would be 15 dice to restrain him. Well, technically 16, that plus 1 strength.
Yeah, roll it out.
Double check the difficulty I'm rolling against. Should be normal for combat. Jesus Christ!
Wow. Very quickly, you notice Anafnemtet's doing something very occult in nature. And almost as soon as you notice it, from the shadows right in front of him, emitted from the moon, these 3 large tendrils spring up like trees and engulf him quickly. He's almost immediately swallowed by this. Yells in Italian from Ludovico and the others commence. Roll initiative. Okay. Anafnemtet has to break out of this. But he is drained. In fact, he doesn't have a dice pool big enough to beat that, so he's gonna fail this round trying to just break out. Oh, you're faster than that.
Yep, I got 14.
So you have the next move. You see that Anafnemtet looks completely restrained. And all of the others have their attention on you. Ludovico is mounted, the other two are on foot.
Yeah, no, she's gonna try to have those tendrils pop his stupid neck. Crack his neck, break the spine, kill him, that type of thing.
Okay. They have an independent action, so you can just roll their... What do we decide? Is it just strength and a 10 abrasion rating? What is it?
No, my die pool is, number of tendrils has 5 dice each. I've got 3 tendrils, so that's 15, and that's +1 to it because they get...
That's right. Okay. Yeah, roll it out. A lot of dice to only get. Did you add in your extra successes? Oh, well, actually, that's more the... I probably should have rolled to resist him, but... It's not a real attack, is it? It's just crushing damage, right? Just strength.
Less crushing damage, more I'm trying to break his neck.
Just trying to think. If they're grappling him, can you apply that to the head specifically and still be a grapple? Well, I guess I'll roll his soak either way. Well, 6 on the damage, 6 on the soak. He ended up soaking all
Actually, ones.
Oh, you took... Yeah. So that's you that.
I used F1 out of habit.
So you netted 2. Gain half. So that's 1 bashing damage after everything. So you are slowly starting to crush him. You think you maybe hear the sound of something crunching from within. As he is slowly, very slowly pulverized. But that's their independent action. you should be able to do something else.
Yes, that begs another question. In Tenebrous Avatar, do I have to stay in a humanoid shape, or can I disperse? It just says metamorphize into a creature of shadowy horror.
What do you mean disperse?
Make it more difficult to find me in the shadows. Do I have to stay in the humanoid form is what I'm asking.
No, you don't. I mean, you can, like, slip through cracks, right? That's basically the idea, is that you're just like a moving nebulous form of darkness, is how I imagine it. That's basically impervious to physical damage. But as far as, like, making yourself invisible or anything, like...
I don't mean make myself invisible, that's, So, this, Are there any cracks between the rocks of this tomb that I can slip into while this is going on to give myself some cover?
Absolutely there are, yes. The slabs of Bath Tumulus are long stone slabs, and it looks like it's set into place a long time ago, but you can slip through almost any crack like this.
Yep, I'm gonna slip into that now that I already have a hold on him.
Alright. You spend your turn retreating into the cracks of the stone supports for Bath Tumulus, and become very difficult for any of the rest to do anything about. I gotta think about what they would do now. You hear from somewhere inside the stone slabs some swords being drawn, although you can't see what's exactly happening anymore. You will hear some things. Levels these things have. 4 health levels. Soak equal to your soak. What is your stamina? Base stamina, Lynn?
My stamina is 2.
Okay.
With no fortitude to speak of.
Roger. You hear the sound of something getting hacked away.
Can I roll soak for the tentacles?
Yes, please do. Be rolling. Okay. Roll it again. Alright. One of these tendrils has been cut away, and you can kind of sense that, because although you can't see anything, you do have some innate control over these things, and you can feel that the presence of your darkness out there is diminishing. Stamina again. Again, you hear more hacking away as very quickly the tendrils you have out there get cut down. You think maybe only one remains. Go ahead and roll the strength plus one of your remaining tendril as Anafnemtet tries to break free. Alright, tie goes to defender. One success against one success. Your remaining tendril loses its grip on Anafnemtet, and although you can't see much of this, you do get a sense of what's happening just kind of as a sixth sense through some of your tendrils and what's happening to them. What do you do?
Can I summon more tendrils to replace the ones that were lost?
So I have to balance this somehow, so the way I think is most fair is you can re-summon, but it's going to undo your remaining one. So you can't keep summoning more and more forever.
Okay. That's fair.
But yes. I am going to say that's going to require you to be able to see what's going on, so you'll have to escape your stone castle, at least briefly, to come out here.
Is there any way to shift the tenebrous form as a way to peek out there?
I'll let you try, but there will be a chance you get spotted. So give me another dex stealth, and we'll keep it at difficulty 5, because you are a dark little thing. But there will be a chance of you being spotted.
Even if I do that, they have more dice than I do in my pool, so that would likely result in myself getting spotted. Instead, could I roll my self-control to try to get her anger in check?
I think that's appropriate. Yeah, roll your self-control. I'll let you decide the difficulty. I think you know Elined's headspace better.
It would definitely be a high difficulty. To be completely honest, it'd probably be around an 8 or something, or one of her friends was just cut down in front of her.
Let's go with 8. I think that's fair.
Nope.
That is a botch. So, you begin to peek out because you want to get a better look at Anafnemtet so you can summon more tendrils and crush his skull. And you get fixated on that image of destroying him and what happened to Cormac just minutes ago. And instead of peeking out, you end up leaping out as a kind of black, tenebrous monster. And you emerge into your physical form so that you can tackle Anafnemtet, devour him with your fangs, tearing his throat out. So I'm going to take control of your character briefly.
Go ahead.
And spend some blood on strength, because I want to kill Anafnemtet.
I don't have much blood left, but go ahead.
No, you don't, but it's all going to strength. I'm taking
As an insight into her headspace, the Giovanni, she doesn't give a shit about the Giovanni right now. She just wants to kill Anaf because he's the one that killed Cormac.
Mm-hmm. Okay. No brawl.
Yeah, she's not the fighty type.
Still,
She does have her sword at her side, though.
oh, you're not in a good enough headspace for that. Still, I am in a lower difficulty because this is such a shock for you to emerge basically from the cracks of this wall, turn from a black, tenebrous form into you, this fanged monster coming out of the darkness. It's such a shock that this is going to be a little bit easier for you. Alright, you are going to make contact with him at the very least. It's a surprise to everyone when you emerge the way you do and jump at Anafnemtet, and you do connect, pushing all of your small but mighty weight. Actually, I didn't bring in your potence.
No, you did not. I could spend a blood in order to activate potence.
No, you absolutely would, so that's going to happen. Let me look at this again.
Actually, I wasn't considering potence when it came to my tendrils either. Whoopsie.
Let's see here. Yeah, you have a couple potents here. So with that, that would be 3 successes. So he ends up taking another bashing, although it's halved and rounded down. So this would have hurt a normal person, but he's a little bit too sturdy. Still, the contact is significant. Significant enough that even with this soak, you've gotten on top of him. You hear him yelling to the others. There are sounds of Italian somewhere around you, but you're so lost in anger. The beast is really in control now. This is all kind of a distant hollow to you. An echo. Roll your soak.
Alright, ones don't apply to damage or soak. I don't need to put F1 there.
Correct.
Nope.
Alright, you take 3 lethal. As you feel somewhere in your side, you're being cut open from a blade. As Giovanni steps forward. You hear more Italian yelling out. Make a roll for Ludovico. You're frozen in place as something takes hold of you and your body freezes. But again, the beast is really in control, so you only vaguely are aware that something has stopped you. It's not painful, but it's controlling and cloistering and suffocating. You feel as though the sun is rising because you can no longer move your body. Anafnemtet falls out from beneath you, and you fall torpid in front of him, although still aware of your senses. And then you feel something pierce you from behind. And everything goes black for you, as your heart is pierced. That, the scene will fade. We will transition to a new scene. Elsewhere, Robert de Vere is still in Canterbury. It's still late autumn 1455 or thereabouts. Robert, it's a few more nights since your events with Heather and this thug that you've murdered in cold blood. You brought Heather back, covered in blood and nude and covered in your cloak. After a few nights laying low in Cornelius's new home, he eventually returns. In that time, you find every night rising here is a battle just to wake up. The weight of this city is oppressive and burdensome. It's as though something intangible in the air keeps you at this baseline of anxiety and discomfort. The longer you're here, the more palpable and noticeable it feels. Although you get used to it, it's never truly comfortable here. For every night you rise here, I'm going to have you roll your current willpower to overcome the force and not be negatively impacted for it. So I'll have you roll your current willpower, difficulty 6.
That's a 3.
Alright, you can act normally this night. You still feel the discomforting effects, but you're shrugging it off enough that it's not going to impact you in any way. And on this night, you eventually are found by Cornelius, who is walking through the hallway on his return. You can see immediately he looks vexed.
Robert looks gloomy as he greets Cornelius. I trust you've heard.
I have heard some troubling news. My steward tells me you brought a woman off the streets into the manor. Covered only in a cloak, what task has occupied you in my absence?
My attempt to abduct one of the thugs that brutally attacked my ghoul failed. I've had to take his life and flee the scene.
Jesus, Mary, and Joseph. I cautioned you against it. Robert, have you any background in spycraft and handling the affairs of the shadows?
I can say no to spycraft.
Then why? Why do you insist on taking yourself upon these tasks, these risks? You are a century old, are you not?
Indeed. I just had to do something.
Surely with your charm and status, you could get some band of neonates to achieve much of these tasks for you. Both my lord, Gaetan, and Jean-Marc were very careful men. But they were still destroyed by their enemies, insulated by guards and walls, carriages, horses. There are enough threats out there already without us going out and finding more.
What you say is true enough. There are better ways, certainly. I wanted to have a personal hand in... Well, the reason I wanted to do this abduction was to heal Guy, my ghoul.
And you could not compel or bribe or convince any group of young ones or mortals to do this for you?
I've already involved one mortal. Thankfully, they were unharmed.
Unharmed. By the reports and gossip my men tell me, there are concerns for a succubus in the town, of men disappearing with women only to be found eviscerated in their bedrooms. You created a legend out of her.
Is that so?
Already these hunters, these inquisitors, were active. Surely this is not going to deter them. You may have hid from the sun for more nights than I, Robert de Vere, but I have walked this earth longer, and observed closely the moves by my masters. You must be more careful.
Your spies. Did this hinder their progress?
It is too early to say. However, there are developments my contacts have alerted me to, which you should be privy to as well, if indeed you still seek to unearth the slayer of Jean-Marc.
Aye, I am still focused on that.
He nods once. My contacts have been active even before your own man came. They were well aware of the details of his arrival here, asking questions, and his detainment. They know of these thugs you seek, their names, their homes. They're also aware even of the assault of your companion. The woman.
Yes.
They have recorded these events in detail. My contacts, some of them have gotten into the cathedral. They are aware a bishop, Louis de Poitiers, is here. Under false pretenses. He is a French bishop. He is hosting a small and strange group in a kind of safe house outside the city.
And his connections.
We believe he may be harboring the brothers, Patrick and Brooks McNally, as well as several others. A strange woman in red scholar robes, as well as a knight and perhaps others. It seems to be owned by this older couple. Perhaps they're complicit or coerced into letting the group stay there with them. I have reason to believe these are, some of them, hunters.
So the target is painted. Do you seek to act soon or wait longer?
I must be very cautious now, especially with these events of late. This safe house, it seems to relay messages to the Bishop Louis of Poitiers through a boy, a courier, a little more than a donkey.
possible would it be to intercept this courier?
For either of us, impossible. He travels during the day. I am not yet sure if I wish to attack this safe house. Surely this group has preparations of its own. Or even if to kill them all would devoid us further of answers.
Quite right, there is no major need to eliminate them, but to gather information.
He seems to relax a bit, having been tense for some time. He kind of folds his arms and looks down at the ground thoughtfully. For now, we must be patient. We may yet see an opportunity. This Bishop, Louis, he is not meant to be here. His explanations, we have found, are faulty. He could be removed from the country or perhaps even imprisoned by the English. Although it would require some connection to the English clergy. The common laws will not affect him. And you will not find a knight in this city who will detain a bishop. So unless you think of an excellent plan for where to go next, we seem to be at a standstill. We may gather information for now. I have met enough stewards to aid in the running of the merchants of the staple. The resources will hold for now, but eventually the mercers and the weight of their empire will come upon it.
Have they begun working openly against the stable?
In the state I found it already, many contracts had been reneged and contractors poached away. The merchants of the staple is already bleeding away. I have stemmed the bleeding for now, but history suggests that it is only a matter of time. Until then, we have this manor and the use of many of my contacts. See that it is not a wasted opportunity. Kind of starts to move past you. He pats you on the shoulder briefly. I must go and feed. He starts to disappear down the hallway somewhere behind you.
Would you like some company?
I think I shall see to my own meal. Kind of looks you up and down. Then he turns a corner and he's gone. What will Robert do?
I guess I'll check on Heather.
All right. Heather's doing as well as you might expect. It's only been a few nights. Thankfully, your presence is reassuring to her. She stopped trembling a couple nights ago, but she's afraid to leave. She's afraid of what might be said of her, as the rumors through the staff and stewards have reached this manor, and she and you, and perhaps Cornelius, know who the identity of this succubus was. And so she has been avoiding outside contact.
Well, now is the time to speak with her.
You can reliably find her in your room, or at least the room that Cornelius has given you.
I'll seek her out and start a conversation.
You open the door to your small guest bedroom and see her standing there. She's looking out a window and kind of twisting at some long locks of hair. She startles as the door opens and then smiles faintly as you enter. "Oh, my lord."
Heather, are you well?
She tries to force a smile, but you can see the concern in her eyes. "My lord, they are saying I am a succubus. That I took the soul of that poor man. Was it always your intention to do that?"
No, it was not. The man simply proved to be more sturdy than I hoped.
"I was just looking to make some coin, that's all."
I know, and now your life has been thrown in an upheaval. And tell me, what do you wish to do?
"I wish to know what you are, my lord. Am I a bride of the devil now?"
No.
"Am I damned?"
Not yet. I do not believe you are.
"Not yet, so it can happen."
Aye.
"And if I commit suicide, then I am doubly damned." She kind of looks off in thought. You can see tears welling up in her eyes.
Ease your tears. I will not do anything to endanger your soul. And you are not damned yet, as in, knowing me will not inherently make you damned.
She looks to you and almost instinctively smiles at your face.
If you must know, I am under a curse. It is said that it has been a mark on the descendants of Cain, if you are familiar.
"But what?"
Surely you've heard of the story of Cain and Abel, or have you not attended Mass?
I think I... maybe as a little girl. They don't like my kind coming to Mass.
Of course.
My lord, can we leave the city at least? Even a town away, they wouldn't know. At least not for a while. I'm not what they say.
I know you are not. If you wish to travel with me, this is a possibility. And of course, because your circumstances, due to my causing, I will do all I can to protect you.
You can see a hopeful smile appear on her again as she wipes away a tear. She rushes over to embrace you.
And he'll hold out his hands to give her a half-hearted embrace.
She pulls away and smiles.
When the time comes for us to leave, I will let you know. For now, you are welcome to stay here hidden, as being seen will no doubt attract unneeded attention and consequences.
She nods slowly. You think maybe some of the bigger words escape her. You know, you could go attend mass during the day if you ever woke up for it. They do miracles in there.
If only I could. As I've said, I am cursed, and even being here is quite uncomfortable for me.
Oh.
But, no, it would not be good to be seen. In the next town over, perhaps.
She nods.
I must plan for the evening, so I'll leave you to get ready.
You sure you don't want to ride?
Perhaps later. I have much on my mind right now and need to focus.
She smiles and nods innocently.
And he'll just give her a smile and begin to turn to leave.
Alright. And you leave. What will you do now? Maybe in broad strokes, what is Robert's plan?
Broad strokes. Well, the meeting with Cornelius went about as well as can be expected. Doesn't want to cast neonates into danger. Especially with hunters. Waiting for an opportunity is what seems to be the best thing right now. He is debating whether he should leave the city and pursue other avenues, but being unsure of where to go hinders him from doing that. What part of the city would he most be unlikely to be recognized? Is it like a citywide thing? Does a hunter have this much pull in the city?
Like, what part of Canterbury might you be less recognized in?
Mm-hmm.
It's tough to say. Canterbury's a pretty big city, but even the biggest cities in these days are not so big that, one person from one side of the city wouldn't have contact with someone from the other side. We're talking, like, still tens of thousands of people, as opposed to, like, hundreds of thousands. So, you don't know what these Inquisitors know, or who they have, so it's really tough to say. It is possible that you could be recognized in any part of it, or not.
Fair enough. Not a risk he's willing to take. Perhaps he will go to another city just close by and see what kind of support he could rummage up. Maybe see what the clergy in other cities are up to. What is the next city that would have a a bishop? If probably not. I'm sure that would be far away. Oh well, I'll ask the question. What city would or town would have a bishop?
Let's see here. Let me look at my maps. Diocese of England. So you are in the Canterbury Diocese, so next over would be either Selsey or Rochester. Rochester is west of you and south of London. So that would be, let's see here. Yeah, the town of Rochester would be a fairly minor bishopric, but that's west of, and then otherwise there is Selsey, which is farther west, and I believe that's a seaside town. Yes. It's actually not very far from the port you left when you first came south into Dover. It's just east of there, east of Portsmouth, in the Isle of Wight. So these are both relatively smaller towns, but they do have bishoprics.
I guess perhaps a theology role is required at this point, because I am unsure of how the structure of the church is. Perhaps Robert would actually know something more about what would be the best way to detain this Bishop of France.
Sure. Good thinking. I probably should have had you roll for the bishoprics, but that's not super intense knowledge. So I will have you roll your intelligence, theology, standard. You could also do law too, because there's a distinction between like common and like clergy law. So if you want to do that, you can also do it. But otherwise, intelligence, theology, standard difficulty.
Okay, I'll go the theology route.
Technically, that's more like scripture and knowledge, but it's whatever.
Oh, well, you think like
I think
church law would
church
be...
law would be more like intelligence law, like that's what you're going for.
Okay, well, I'll go with law then.
It's kind of splitting hairs, but... Alright, 1 success. So, you know it's very hard for someone at the level of a bishop to be arrested for anything. If it was going to happen, it would have to be by the church. With 1 success, you're not exactly sure how that would happen, but you know it would have to be someone of a higher ranking ecclesiastical position than a bishop. So like an archbishop, like the Archbishop of Canterbury, could almost certainly do it.
The only problem is, I'm sure where that archbishop is very uncomfortable, and also the prince doesn't want meddling with the clergy.
You might think of something else, actually. Make an intelligence etiquette roll. Standard difficulty. Might correct something you just said. Five successes. Alright. So this plays on some relevant but somewhat side knowledge. You're very good at schmoozing in courts and making friends with nobility, and you know, because you've been in the places these nobles have been, many bishops and archbishops enjoy a life of luxury that is well above the common people. Many of them have very nice palaces, and you know that a lot of them keep fine estates in London, including probably the Archbishop of Canterbury would have to be one of the most prominent ones. And you're almost certain that he has a palace in London as well.
And it seems that London would be the best place to head back to and try to work from that angle. So for a broad plan, he'll of course leave a note for Cornelius, telling him that he's taking off to London to gather what support he can to detain their target. They'll head over to London, bringing Guy and Heather with him, as long as any other servants that came along from his herd. I imagine they're got somewhat of a caravan going. He'll head back to London, get settled there, see if he's still welcome in the estate.
In the Chamberlain estate?
Yeah, Chamberlain estate.
Okay. You do have a little bit of convoy following you, which is actually not at all unusual in this day and age. Many nobility move with households of dozens, sometimes hundreds of people, depending on how high a noble you're talking about. And that's not to say anything about the retinue of knights. So it's actually very helpful in proving and giving the appearance of higher status than you actually have right now, given your lack of finances. Fortunately, your herd are drawn to natural magnetism and other supernatural means. And so lacking money isn't as big a problem for you as it is for other nobles. And so you begin to pack up your belongings, what few you have, and Guy de Free, Heather Hurley are, of course, happy to follow you. And you make your way back towards London. And we will catch up with Judith around this time. Judith, remind me, as I recall, you were in the process, or maybe done by now, of emptying the Chamberlain estate of belongings and moving it to the castle. Is that correct?
That was the plan, yeah. Bare bones, simple stuff left behind. No, the library would be emptied. Obviously, writing desk, simple beds upstairs in the chambers, things of that nature. It would still be usable. It wouldn't be nearly as finely furnished as it was.
Okay.
The intent was eventually to make it a gift to the gauntlet.
So we'll say most of that is accomplished by the time you return, Robert. And so right now, as I said, we're talking about late autumn 1455. I know we talked about some of your plans, Judith, a couple sessions ago. Was there anything left that you were still trying to finalize? Or what else were you waiting on?
I was waiting on expansion plans into Spain and France, waiting to hear back from the rest of the Chamberlain men so that she could cow them into submission, for lack of a better term. Let's see, waiting to hear back from sources seeking out descendants of Owen Glendower in Wales. And apart from that, is this before or after Rothschild confronts her?
After.
So she would be making plans to make for Canterbury at this point.
That's ironic.
I know, right?
Alright, give me 1 sec. I just want to take a couple notes here. Okay. Yeah, some of this still has to take time, but this would probably be, I don't know, a few weeks, maybe a month after you're aware that Kazim ran into Robert. About a month later, and it's during that month that you have your encounter with Rothschild. Most of what you're waiting on is still making progress. A lot of it has to do with waiting on messengers to return and covering great distances. But you do eventually hear word that it seems Robert de Vere has returned to the manor, and Robert, unless any special directive was made, you're let back into the manor, but it's as bare bones as you recall last time you were here.
The plan was to return to the manor. I'm assuming no one is approaching him and telling him that this place is for use for the gauntlet for the foreseeable future?
No, you're not given very much explanation. It seems like you're allowed in, and the staff has been much reduced as well. In fact, of the few people still working there, only one actually recognizes you and has to let you in. This kind of lowly steward, kind of like a sub-steward, lets you in, and he doesn't have a whole lot of information except that a lot of the belongings have been moved out, and you are welcome to stay, although he's not sure for how long.
Fair enough. I guess the first thing he'll do is he'll seek out Alexander Hitchcock again. This goal will be to get Alexander's opinion on the hunters, and depending on if he's against them, he'll seek out his... he'll tell him about the Bishop of France and perhaps seek out a blessing to get some involvement in at least questioning him and finding out who is behind the worshipful mercers.
You're going to have to probably summarize that for me. So you're going to talk to Alexander Hitchcock about the hunters?
Yes. Basically gauge his opinion. If he thinks their hunters are in the right and Canaanites should be hunted down or whatever, he's not going to tell him about how he's going to try and get close to the Archbishop.
Mm-hmm.
But if he does, he'll give his plan to Alexander and see what he has to say.
So you are going to give him your plan to take the Archbishop?
Depending on his opinion of hunters, yes.
I see. Depending on his response. Okay. All right. Unless you particularly want to open this up into a scene to get the minutia of, like, his responses, I'll probably end up doing the broad strokes of his response.
I am fine with the broad.
Okay. So, to kind of surreptitiously gain his real opinion on witch hunters in general, I will have you make a manipulation empathy difficulty 7.
Would his merit play any role here?
Let me review your merit. You're talking about enchanting voice?
Yep.
Make your argument for what you're doing here with your enchanting voice.
Well, if it's a manipulation, I'm assuming he's trying to persuade him in some way.
From the description you gave me, it sounds like you're trying to kind of coax this opinion out of him without revealing much of your motives. So I feel like you're not trying to get him to do something, just kind of give an opinion.
Yeah, fair enough. I guess that will come later. What was the roll again?
Manipulation empathy difficulty 7. Alright, 2 successes. That's still fairly successful. Let me look over my notes for him. Get in his headspace again. So you get him talking, and it's actually not too difficult for him to get on about his certainty of the damned nature of Canaanites and the need to find redemption through their existence, through faith, primarily, but through acts of faith and penance. Not through self-destruction, but through acts of benevolence towards the kine, and treating them with as much care and respect as possible, almost like a shepherd and he likens this to biblical verses and quotes several to you. As for the hunters themselves, he laments the intent and motive of these hunters, but he doesn't seem to hate them. He seems to understand and regret their need. He seems to recognize why they would. Of course there'd be hunters. We are damned creatures. But that's not to say he thinks that every Cainite should walk into the street and walk into the flames. His opinion is mostly one of discretion, that penance can best be done through small acts, that the gifts that Cainites have should be subtly used to improve humanity and avoid detection from these hunters.
Okay. Alright, perhaps he will tell him somewhat of the plan, but have the delivery not be something that would seem aggressive. Okay, so he'll try to convince him that hunters in Canterbury have information on perhaps outside Cainite influence among a powerful organization around Britain. The only issue is he would need a way to be able to speak with them without obviously putting himself in danger. And he'll see how that goes, and we'll go from there.
Okay. So you're trying to explain to him kind of as like a second degree means to removing undue influence in the mortal world of this alleged Cainite influence. There are these mortal hunters that know about them, and you want to talk to them safely somehow.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
See what his reaction to that is.
Let me think. I don't know if you need to roll anything for that, because you already have your 2 successes, and you're not trying to do anything really new except get his opinion. I'll spare the roll. He thinks it's a very unwise idea to try and speak to these hunters over his existence, which is considerable, as he is an elder Bruja. He tells you of some of the things he's seen these people do. He's seen very powerful Cainites go toe-to-toe and be destroyed by single men. Things that even elders of your kind could not hope to achieve. And even if this group had information on a powerful Cainite influence, it seems much more destructive and violent to try and involve yourself with them to get to another force, unless you really thought this other influence of Cainites was that dangerous. But he's hard-pressed to believe there could be such danger worth risking an interrogation of Inquisitors.
course, Robert at this point will attempt to impress him how dangerous the situation is, how much funds, how much of the economy is controlled by this group.
Okay. Give me a charisma expression. Difficulty 6. Not doing too bad yet. One success, despite rolling 3 ones. Wow. Okay. He's very leery of the claims you're making. It seems incredulous that this group could have so much power over England. But you bring up enough examples and phrase things in such ways that it does get his attention at least. He hasn't completely shot down the possibility. But he asks, what would you do if you got the answers from these inquisitors? What would you do with the information?
Of course, his response would be to bring the attention of this group to the princes and all Canites of good standing of the looming threat with more concrete evidence.
Does Robert mean that? Or is that what he's trying to say to get favor?
He'll mean it in this case. What has been pointed as at least the Worshipful Company is a grave threat in that.
Okay. He seems to nod a couple times and agrees, and you seem to overall, and this doesn't take place in exactly one conversation, it takes some time. He speaks verbosely on some subjects, and takes a few nights of talking to him to kind of get this far, and rebuilding relations with him, and by the end of your last discussion, he seems to agree that perhaps there is this almost intangible threat, this influence over clearly a powerful organization, and you do seem to have the right intent in mind. But he's curious now, why have you brought all this attention, all this discussion to him and not a prince or the other gauntlet members?
He'll mention truthfully that the princes have not shown interest in, at this point, theories that are loosely supported with evidence. They want something more concrete and firm. As for the other Gauntlet members, he knows that others are pursuing other goals at this moment in the investigation, and that his recent travel to Canterbury affirmed that, in his mind, that these hunters do have vital information on this. And since they have such a strong connection with the church, perhaps he knows of Alexander knows a way to approach this situation.
Alexander seems to lament the state of the princes, and it seems like he just kind of nods sagely in agreement, thinking that the Covenant princes are far too involved in their own politics and the jihad, and this ongoing war between Ragna and Barbaros to give concern to other looming threats. And your question was, does he have any way of interacting with the clergy?
Sure, and he'll mention he does know high members keep estates in London, and he'll just throw that hook out there and let it hang.
Alexander responds, telling you that he has often speaked with deacons and bishops, and occasionally some of the archbishops, really just to discuss theological matters and debates of the mind. He doesn't maintain very regular contact with the archbishops, as it's difficult for him to justify never aging and always speaking to them. It's been a few decades since he really showed his face in that high of a crowd. But he does say that he's usually well received when he does engage them. Usually has to wait a number of days before he can resurface, usually under a different name, of course.
Of course, the next question would be, would there be any new recent appointments or ones that would be best for him to perhaps provide an introduction to?
New appointments of, like, bishops or archbishops?
Of the office of, well, archbishop, may perhaps. After all, he is immortal.
There's no very new appointments. He knows of the current archbishops. He just hasn't met them personally.
Well, at least knowledge of who would most likely be in the city, that who he can approach, would be very helpful.
Sure, give me one moment. Let's look up some notes. Are you asking about the Archbishop of Canterbury right now?
General, but sure, he'll mention the Archbishop of Canterbury because that is where he just was.
Is a man by the name of John Kemp. He's originally from York. He's been made Archbishop of Canterbury actually as of just last year, so relatively recent by your standards. Pretty recent, in fact. And he does have a palace in London. He can also tell you that these individuals of such high station are often at Westminster Palace, either speaking with other bishops or nobles. High-profile individuals seem to congregate there, all the better to gain and exchange status.
Okay. Of course, he'll thank Alexander for being there for him to bounce ideas off of, and he'll start looking into gaining access to Westminster Palace and seeing if indeed he can find this John Kemp.
Okay. I do think at this point we can probably get back to Judith and start wrapping up more of the downtime of the end of 1456. First, we're going to take a break since we're right around the 2-hour mark, so we'll come back in about 15 minutes, and then we'll pick up with the rest of downtime. Sound good?
Sounds good.
Cool. See, are you here?
That I am.
I don't exactly know what they're gonna do with you.
That is fair. It was more me reflecting on, okay, she's pissed and she saw one of her few friends killed right in front of her. What is she going to do? She's going to act irrationally. Well, better ride this out and see what...
Yeah. I had anticipated at the last session when you said you were going to chase after them. I thought, she's going to die next. She's going to be put into real deal tenure torpor. Or she's going to get some sense into her and turn around. And you did none of the above. You botched and frenzied, and an excellent opportunity to take you alive as a prisoner showed up. And so they did that.
Yep.
But that means I don't know what's going to happen next. I have to process that, because there's a lot of things they could do with you.
Yeah, I know.
So you may not see a lot of screen time in the next 2 hours if you want to do something else, or you can hang out and listen with us.
I'll listen.
Okay.
I mean, there's one person whose character is already dead, and he's still sticking around to listen.
Yep. I'd prefer that rather than... I prefer having you staked for a thoughtful ending than deciding right now without really knowing where they would take you or what they would do with you, and then regretting it afterwards.
Yeah.
Yeah, because it could end a number of ways.
Yeah, you're not out of the woods at all.
I knew it was a stupid thing going in. It was just... Yeah, no, I couldn't justify her being calm and calculated after seeing one of her friends killed in front of her.
Well, she is on the path of kings, so you could if you really wanted to, but I think...
If I really wanted to, but that'd be one hell of a stretch.
I think it was good roleplay.
And she had a chance to come to her senses with that self-control roll. It just didn't work out.
Yeah. I just need to refresh myself on what else is going on in the War of the Roses right now. Alright, looks like we're back. So we will return. So wrapping up the end of 1455. Judith, you have a few things going on.
I do.
Over the last few months, going into the end of fall and the rest of winter, going into 1456, expanding your trade to the south, you want to go to Spain and where else?
Rouen in France.
Okay.
Specifically the port of Santander in Spain.
Is this more of a directive you give to the stewards you have helped to appoint to all this, or are you trying to involve yourself more personally?
Personally, if necessary, but the stewards have the coin, the capital, the materials necessary to make it happen. If Judith needs to be directly involved, she will, just to assert that it is the will of House Chamberlain to have this done.
All right. They report back, your stewards, those in charge of making contact with the ports in Rouen and in Spain, report that in France they are very reluctant to start new trade agreements with English at this time. 100 Years' War is still somewhat recent and raw, and it's not a firm no, but it seems like it's going to take quite a bit longer to make inroads in France from an English trader at this time.
That might require a direct personal hand at some point in the future, but not right now.
Possibly, yeah. Either by meeting a negotiator to discuss this more in person, or perhaps through other incentives, or perhaps just letting time go by as you have time on your side. As for Spain, they seem more receptive to trade. What you notice during this time, especially as the eruption of this civil war has wrought, is trade overall in England has slowed significantly. I won't make you roll on this because you're high enough on it, on mercantile. The war has really stagnated trade within England, and the prices of goods are dropping, but no one has a lot of coin because overall the economy is not doing very well. There's a lot of uncertainty after this battle. The Duke of York is the protector of the realm, but people are well enough aware of what's going on that no one feels ready to commit investments anywhere. And it seems like Spain is caught onto this as well. Of course, there are sailors from Spain that reach England and vice versa, so news has of course reached that there's instability in England. So overall, your endeavors to make trade happen during this unstable time is not very fruitful right now.
Would it help to remind Spain that they wouldn't be making any investments at all? It would be House Chamberlain that would be making the investment and ferrying Spanish goods back to England.
You kind of get the runaround through a series of messengers in that overall they don't want to commit too soon. And give me an intelligence politics roll, standard difficulty. You might be able to answer this for yourself.
Politics or commerce?
Actually, commerce would be applicable here too. You can use that. Standard difficulty. Alright, 2 successes. So you know that part of this is likely due to their concern about being on the wrong side of history. That they could be perceived, once England stabilizes by whichever ruler comes out on top, that Spain was taking advantage of the wrong side or was buying in at a very low cost, and Spain wants to avoid any complication of trade routes with England while there is so much political tumult going on in England. So this is much a business as it is a political move for them to kind of drag their heels.
That's actually reasonably fair. Would they be amenable to resuming negotiations once the crown had been stabilized on a ruler?
You think so, and they seem to lean that way, making remarks such as when England has seen a prolonged period of peace and this seems to be behind, they'd be happy to revisit the issue.
I don't feel like that's necessarily an unreasonable caveat to place, all things considered. So that's at least promising, if not necessarily the answer I want.
Alright, as for contacting the Chamberlain men who have just started to reach out and contest claims of the enterprise of House Chamberlain, can you describe more about how you wanted to placate or intimidate them?
I think we'll try placation first, since assuaging egos is easier than inflaming fear. Nothing is meant to, basically assuring them that nothing is going to change as far as their fortunes are concerned. They are still masters of their own domains within the trade ports they have controlled for decades now. Only control over the London port has changed and will remain incorporated under House Chamberlain.
As I understand this, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, you're doing this as under the auspices of being the wife of another Chamberlain, or how are you presenting yourself?
The named goddaughter and sole inheritor of Albert Chamberlain.
Okay. So you don't claim blood lineage to House Chamberlain?
Not as such, because
Okay.
that would then kind of raise questions that Judith doesn't want to answer in the canine world.
Right. Okay. That's gonna make it pretty tough. A woman unconnected by blood or marriage, apparently, to House Chamberlain is gonna be a really tough sell. Not impossible, just difficult. So you are trying to massage their egos and make sure that they know that their businesses outside of England are going to be intact.
Completely
and
safe.
untouched.
Yep, exactly.
They quickly retort that they're not worried about that. They wish to make sure that the foundational cornerstone of House Chamberlain, based in London, is in fact ran by one of the Chamberlain, and not some misbegotten named goddaughter.
She will retort with assurances that if any children she does bear in the future will be named Chamberlain, and any unions will be matrilineal in her part, to ensure that the line of Chamberlain remains intact insofar as inheritance is concerned.
Their reply, and of course this takes,
Months.
weeks.
Yes.
Yeah, exactly. Their reply is that it's name alone, it's not blood. You aren't a real Chamberlain. You're just a goddaughter. And they need a real Chamberlain to house and hold the head title of the household. Otherwise, it's an embarrassment. As well as a concern for the family.
Question for you. Would Judith have known who it was that Robert went to Canterbury with? Presuming that Robert and Cornelius both stayed within the Chamberlain estate.
Oh, that he went with Cornelius?
To Canterbury.
Unless Robert left a message, all your attendants would know was that there was some kind of dark-haired, bearded man accompanying him. And actually, he had another man with him, so there seemed to be two of them.
She'd know Guy DeFree.
Yes.
The description, would it fit the last description she had, having seen Cornelius before he was
It's too vague.
last?
Did Robert leave any message or inform anybody about who he was with?
I
I
don't believe so. The only message he got from Elined was that she would take longer. Is that correct? I can't remember exactly.
She sought research elsewhere.
Okay. In that case, he wouldn't have really left a message. Of course, he thinks that Thomas is dead, and he would have no reason to leave a message there. Of course, he's in London now, but yeah, I'm sure the timeline's not the same.
Well, given how long it takes all of these these transactions and messengers and couriers, it's somewhere in the middle of these messages, Judith, that Robert returns. Of course, at this point, he's only accompanied by Guy DeFree, and now a woman of some kind. Some trollop.
Judith will point out that House Chamberlain exists in name only and has done so for decades. It has been incorporated under a banner with its stewards and suppliers and warehousemen since Albert saw fit to staunch the flow of hemorrhaging contracts.
Alright, the next letter you receive is a retort, which is accompanied by legal notice of intent for legal action, in that the main contact you've been speaking with has been named Jonathan Chamberlain. And he says that House Chamberlain will not be ruled in name alone, and he intends to pursue acquisition of the London business by virtue of his better claim to it. And he reportedly has the backing of other male Chamberlain relatives, of which he lists.
And then, response, Judith will outline the plans for expanded trade ports in Rouen and Santander. And remind them that it was her godfather who placed them where they are currently, and through her, their fortunes will further rise. But seek this legal recourse if you feel you must. Just know that on your head be it when it all comes crashing down upon you, and the merchants, the holy or the worshipful company of merchants, snatches it from your hands.
All right. I will take a manipulation expression for composing a letter that is meant to both extol the virtues of this better opportunity and intimidate them at the same time as to the possibility of not going with this. But you're basically trying to convince them that instead of going out after the Port of London and letting a non-blooded, unmarried woman basically own House Chamberlain's by far most profitable port in the world, they should just enjoy what they have, not pursue it, and let you take it from there. So your difficulty is going to be 9.
Oof. Needless to say, spending some willpower here.
Okay.
Ooh,
Wow.
can I get persuasive as the manipulation specialty?
Yes, you can. That's
That'll be
4
4.
successes. You compose a well-written letter, and you are very careful on the wording and the couching of certain implied threats, leveraging their preference for money over pride. And you get a response back not until really the beginning of 1456, around January. It takes a full month to get a response back. You're used to a couple weeks. This Jonathan Chamberlain, he seems to accept your position that At some point in the line of Chamberlain heirs, you were named for some reason that the house has done well while you have been in control, and if this was a decision made by your godfather and business does in fact continue to rise, they are willing to forego the lawsuit and let you maintain control against all odds. They seem to care more about money than pride.
Like any good merchant.
And so it seems you've won the battle of the males claiming the Chamberlain enterprise. Kudos.
Now I just have to keep it.
Alright, next you had plans to go to Canterbury.
Quite so.
I don't know if you would know if Robert just came from there or not.
Well, see, I thought perhaps Judith might encounter him at Elysium. Assuming he might go there.
Would Robert go there during his time in London? He does have to meet with Alexander Hitchcock from time to time, and at some point you'd probably have to go there to find him.
Okay. Let's say he certainly would have sought out Alexander at Elysium before.
Alright. And by now we're in January of 1456. And let's see here. Okay. We will open up a scene in Elysium. Perhaps after Robert just got done speaking with Alexander in one of the alcoves. Just updating the people here. Oops, that's 2. All right. Robert, you have a productive conversation with Alexander. He talks to you about Westminster Palace, and you're discussing some of the archbishops. You think you have a good idea, at least, where to go now. And so you're departing and passing through Elysium. You see a number of people present you've seen many times in the past. The Cassandra, Simone de Champ, seems to be speaking quietly with some of the neonates, eyeing you suspiciously at a distance. You also see the representative of the Camarilla. Let's see here. You also see Mordecai Benjamin, the merchant of London, or one of them at least. Genevieve Silvers is in attendance. Tom Lafoy. And Judith, you see Robert passing through these crowds. Looks like he's on his way out.
Judith will intersect his path and reach out to touch at his elbow before he's fully past.
At this, Robert will raise an eyebrow at this odd interaction and speak. Good evening. Can I do something for you?
She'll curtsy appropriately. Lord de Vere. Pleasure. I don't know that we've been formally introduced.
We have not. May I have the pleasure of knowing your name?
Stone. Judith Stone. I understand you have made use of one of my inns in town from time to time. I don't mean to imply anything owed, of course, simply that I have observed this.
Indeed. And the name of your inn?
I believe we decided it was called the Drunken Thatcher.
Blushing Thatcher.
That's the one.
And a flash of recognition appears on Robert's face. Yes, I have frequented that inn. The fine establishment from the time I've been there.
Even those who toil deserve some respite.
And tell me, how do you keep your nights occupied?
A bit of this, a bit of that. I'm in banking, mainly, but the inn provides a suitable place to find one's herd.
Banking, you say? How fares the economy?
Bit of a downturn at the moment. War will do that after all. I'd actually thought of reaching out to Canterbury.
Canterbury? What business lies there?
The same as anywhere. Textiles, spice, salt.
Ah. Tell me, have you had experiences with the worshipful Mercers?
Not personally.
Then you best be aware. Such things are tightly held under their control. I'm not certain just a background in banking will suffice.
I have found that men of a mercantile persuasion tend to respond well to money.
True enough, but unless you plan on getting a contract from them, which they hold very dear to their hearts.
But is not Canterbury a place of pilgrimage? Pilgrims carry valuables. Valuables they would very much like to have secure. A strong box, at a reasonable fee, provides that security.
An intriguing way of going about it. Yes. That does sound like you would have more chance of success.
You sound not unfamiliar with the city. I wonder if you might tell me how you found Octavia. Her disposition, I mean, of course.
Only that one can expect the unexpected, especially in the case of Cassandra's. She does not keep a large court, but if she tests you and finds you trustworthy, I believe she would not have any reason to be aggressive towards you, perhaps.
I understand that there was some challenges the last time you visited there. Would you happen to be able to point me towards a safe place to find rest?
You must tell me what you've heard.
Merely that you met some difficulty both arriving and departing sometime last year.
And this is common knowledge in London.
Oh, I wouldn't say that. But there are a few little birds that whisper in my ear, no other.
Robert's going to examine these words. I don't think that he would have told many about this.
About the... which specifically?
The trouble he's had in Canterbury.
Didn't Elined try and tell the prince?
Did she? I can't recall.
Elined has been trying to spread word about it around, but the only person she's spoken of it to is Ragna. She was cut off before she had a chance. Well, she's told Ragna about it, and she's told Kincaid about it. However, she was cut off before she was able to get to the topic when it came to the Prince of London.
When you're talking about the topic, you mean...
Yeah, she was trying to handle the issue of Barbaros before she got to the Inquisitors.
Hunters.
Yeah, the Inquisitors. Which promptly got kicked out of the court in London that one time, but she has gotten to the point and said there are issue of Inquisitors with both Ragna and Kincaid. Those are the only two she's gone forward with it for. I don't believe she's told anyone she's gone forward with it, though. I could be misremembering.
Yeah, so as far as, like, Robert specifically, like, being assailed or dealing with these Inquisitor thugs, or his ghoul being dealt with, I don't know if Judith knows about that yet.
I mean, Thomas knew about it.
Did
The
Elined
first-
say that too?
Yeah, Thomas. Yeah,
Oh, okay.
Thomas was informed of. Well, Thomas and Cormac were informed of what happened.
Okay, fair play. As you were.
These birds. Will they be in connection with the gauntlet?
You know the way of these things. I'd rather not reveal my sources, lest they cease their whispers. Rest assured, they speak to none other.
Most curious. I am very intrigued by this, but perhaps a safe haven could be secured there, and perhaps even the means to start up your enterprise.
Oh. Perhaps an investor you're aware of?
Quite. Tell me, when do you plan on traveling to Canterbury?
Soon. I hadn't quite set a date yet, but arrangements are underway.
I too plan on returning soon. Perhaps I can leave you messages at your inn, or do you have a more permanent residence?
Not as yet. The inn would be suitable until such time as a permanent demesne had been arranged. Actually, that raises an interesting question. It's January of 1456. How far along is the castle?
How far along is the what, sorry?
The castle, how close is it to being done?
About 1 year out from what you understand. January 57 is what you were estimated.
Okay. For some reason, I thought it was... Are you proposing that we travel together, Lord de Vere? Would be welcome, though most irregular, for a gentleman of your station.
Nonsense. I intend to go there myself, and it would be best for me to introduce you to my contact there personally. Do you have any acquaintances you would plan on bringing along?
I hadn't thought to, no. I was merely going to hire on a retinue.
And do let me know if you do decide. And do be wary, the city is very unique. I think you'll find it most uncomfortable to stay there for long.
Pish posh. The decision's been made. I merely need to set a date.
So be it. I will certainly let you know when the the time of my departure comes.
As you say. If there's anything I can do to help facilitate such things, don't hesitate. It's the duty of all canines to support the gauntlet, after all.
Robert gives a polite nod with this. Your willingness to help is most noticed, Lady Judith Stone.
Mistress. But I thank you for the honorific. She'll curtsy low.
Robert smiles at this. If there is nothing else, I must be off this night.
Then I will keep you no longer. Good evening to you, Lord de Vere.
And a good evening to you as well.
And as she turns to pass him by, she has a warm little smile on her face.
And Robert will depart his own way.
All right. And you both split off. Return to downtime. Now that we are in 1456. Robert, what were the remainder of your plans for the Archbishop of Canterbury? I think you said something about going to Westminster?
Yes, was starting at Westminster to attempt to contact the Archbishop, John Kemp. That will be the main goal. Anything secondary would be to, if the Archbishop sounds agreeable to the concern he'll raise about this French bishop on English soil.
So the most difficult barrier you immediately face is getting access to the Archbishop. Nobody just sits down and starts talking to him. He surrounds himself only with the people of the highest station. The Duke of York himself is often amongst these circles, as well as Salisbury and Warwick, the two Nevilles. So these are the most powerful people, the most powerful kine in England are here in this palace. And it's going to be difficult for you to casually schmooze with this level of nobility and clergy. However, because of Alexander's tips, you are made aware of several dinners where they're of such grand size that it's inevitable that a few nobles who really don't have any business being here end up at some of the tables. Of course, it's still difficult to get access to people like the Duke of York and the Archbishop. They often have guards, and people around them to screen out the lesser nobles. So you could make your way into one of these dinners, but you will have to blend in seamlessly and find a way to gain access to this inner circle of the very famous.
Is it possible, because this is, Robert, this is not Robert's first interaction with the nobility of London. However, he was spreading the sympathies towards the other side than that of the Duke of York. Would that help or hinder him in any way with the nobles that would be attending?
If you were recognized, it would very much hurt your ability to get close to, like, Duke of York or Salisbury or Warwick. They would look at you very skeptically. Although attempts have been made at reconciliation, and on the surface and at face, it seems like both the Yorkists and the Lancasters are eager to say that there's no more conflict. It's obvious that this has not been fully resolved. Fortunately, the Archbishop of Canterbury is neither a Yorkist or a Lancaster, so you really just need to not get too noticed by the Yorkists here. So what I'm going to have you do at this dinner is you need to blend in and basically pretend to be a living noble that belongs there. So I'll have you do an appearance etiquette, difficulty 8.
Ignore that roll. That was not the right amount of dice. I don't even know how that roll came out. Anyway. Appearance etiquette, difficulty 8. I'll spend a willpower on this.
Okay. Three successes. Wow. Just Robert at this most famous of feasts. This is a very well-to-do gala. How does Robert look, and what does he do with the highest upper class of England to ingratiate himself?
Well, Robert took notes from the last time he interacted with the London court, so he got tips on the latest fashions, and he scrounged up what little he could to appear presentable. And he also knew enough of the nobility during his interaction to at least not be very noticeable to the Yorkist of the group. He plays the part very well of blending in, like he belongs there.
You very carefully sidestep the tables where the Yorkists are most densely concentrated and manage to make enough friends that eventually it's not very surprising that some of the other nobles there that are more well-to-do seem fine with you being there. And after a couple hours, you find yourself actually at the table where the Archbishop of Canterbury, John Kemp, is sitting. There are a couple guards nearby. They are always close to the Archbishop. But you could begin a conversation with him at this point. Of course, it'd be wide and public, and other people would hear you. But if you want his attention, you finally have it.
I suppose this is the time to attempt to perhaps impress the bishop with his theological knowledge, and try to get the bishop's opinion on the politics of the realm, especially that towards outside of Britain, perhaps France.
Alright, so first, to impress him with your knowledge, you can either do an appearance theology or charisma theology. And the difficulty here will be 6.
I'll go with charisma.
Okay. Three successes. Does Robert go in any certain direction with this? With what he wishes to impress with? Like any subject?
Perhaps the plight of the people with the war, and the church's role in handing out mercy to the unfortunate souls that are inflicted by it.
Sure. You kind of begin and dominate a discussion about references to the Bible and their role in mitigating the impact of war with their own acts of charity, and name drop a few martyrs and saints and specific instances. And you do a really good job of kind of modeling and channeling that sympathy and knowledge in a very humble but enlightened manner, to the point where even the Archbishop kind of joins in and agrees with you, and you're both kind of nodding along and saying the same thing. And you definitely seem to have, gained some positive nods from him. And then you wish to turn the topic towards, like, politics of France or international politics?
Sure, that's a start.
Okay. Any direction or, again, subject, or you just want to get him talking about the French in general?
Sure. That's a good start, and perhaps he'll, at some part in the conversation, he'll make an offhanded remark that he recently... Well, how common is it for bishops of other countries to travel around?
It's not unheard of. It's not, I wouldn't even say it's uncommon. Specifically between England and France right now, things are very tense. So while it isn't impossible, it's just highly unlikely. it'd just be kind of an awkward place for a bishop to go proselytizing, especially for the French to come here.
And he'll start the conversation on the French, and when he gets an opportunity to mention that he recently had the opportunity of meeting a French bishop in the Archbishop's own domain, he'll bring that up and see if he's aware of him.
Okay. You get to talking about politics and especially the French and, maybe missionary work of bishops and even just priests and deacons moving here and there. You get from him that he's not very fond of the French, and he makes kind of an offhand comment after he finishes his goblet of wine. You can tell he's had a little bit to drink now. He's a little bit looser with his words, and he says something offhand and derogatory about Joan of Arc rightfully dying as some woman pretending to be a man, as being a sin against God, and not being surprised the French would do such a thing. You definitely get that kind of impression. When you bring up the bishop, this French bishop in Canterbury, he turns to you and looks very surprised. You can tell like one eye is a little bit wider than the other, maybe because he's a little bit drunk, but also definitely showing some genuine surprise here. He asks you to speak more about who this is and what they seem to be doing there. He's seems open to admitting that he wasn't aware there was a French bishop in his diocese.
Okay. At this point, Robert will this is still very public, correct?
Yes, you're sitting around, so some other nobles are sitting around and listening to you. A couple other priests and deacons, guards.
We certainly will play on these suspicions, now that he knows that the bishop's arrival was not announced to proper channels. He'll mention that the man certainly did seem to come with a small group, perhaps secretive. And he'll pry a bit, maybe try to get the Archbishop's opinion on why there would be the need for secrecy. And try to make it as negative as possible.
Alright, so to kind of surreptitiously implicate this group and being associated with this French bishop and not have it come off as weird or targeting or like an agenda you have, make a manipulation. You can do expression or empathy. Difficulty is going to be 5. You've done well in gaining his attention and support right now.
I'll go with expression.
Okay. Difficulty 5. Wow. Any specialties?
Conversation.
If you want to argue for it, you can, but 4 successes is pretty good on its own, too.
Very true. I'm sure 2 extra will not hurt, though.
No? There's a difference.
Yeah. Well, they obviously are in a conversation state, and I think if it would apply, like he is definitely trying to get on their good side, and he's just at this point he's just sharing information that the bishop had not known, although he's certainly twisting it, manipulating it to suit his agenda.
Yeah, just kind of dropping off little packages of information while you're talking about this, that, and the other.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, fair enough. 6 successes, which is huge. It's as good of a success as you could possibly have. Without making you roll for it, you can tell this is alarming to the bishop, and he seems to hang on your every word, describing these sneaky French bastards getting into his city and his diocese, saying who knows what, and probably causing some kind of insurrection, for all he knows. He seems very put off by the idea that he never knew about this French bishop in his city, and is very angry at the idea that the Bishop of Canterbury would not inform him. Definitely seems like something needs to be done about this.
Of course, Robert will do his best to humbly agree. And if the Eminence Archbishop has any questions, he does know of where the man was last seen and staying. And he offers up any opportunity to help him locate the bishop.
You give him the name?
He'll mention the name.
Okay. Archbishop Kemp seems very interested in your words, and at one point kind of nodding, listening to you. He backs away from the table, and he, ushers, looks like one of his attendants over and whispers something into their ear, and then they kind of nod, just looking straight ahead before they back up and dismiss themselves. The Archbishop thanks you for alerting him to this development, this bishop that's gone under his radar, and even his own English bishop has not been dutiful in his purposes. He thinks there's something very amiss going on. And given that this is a public conversation, he puts it as diplomatic as possible, but ensuring that his intention is to clear up any miscommunication or misunderstanding there is about the proper clergy protocol, and invites you to meet him at his palace in London, perhaps in a couple nights, as he has some other affairs to take care of now, and some other dinners to get to as well.
Of course, Robert will graciously accept this offer and enjoy the rest of the night conversing.
The Archbishop actually takes the nearest decanter and fills up the goblet in front of you and hands it to you, and kind of clasps, rings goblets together. And he drinks, and obviously you're expected to drink as well.
Oh boy. What was the roll for keeping down food again?
If you do not have the eat food merit, you can only briefly hold it down. I believe it's stamina and something. Not survival. It might just be pure stamina. There's really nothing else relevant. And your successes, I believe, would give you turns to keep it down before you had to vomit it back up. Because only with the eat food merit could you keep it down for even an hour.
And of course, assuming this is at a table, Robert's food is largely untouched.
Yes. Which no one has really remarked on because the conversation has been so engaging, but now everyone's kind of back to their food and their drink, and your food is untouched. You're just given a goblet full of very fine wine, probably the finest in London right now. Certainly better than any common people are going to have.
Of course, to Robert in his undead state, this is very unappealing to him.
Oh, it's terrible.
And Robert will, of course, politely accept this offering, not wishing to offend the bishop in any manner. And he will... Oh geez, I just looked at his blood pool. Oh, that's lower than I thought it was.
This has been much longer than... This has been like months since you were in Canterbury rolling for this, so... give me 1d10 to see how you've been feeding. And then you can, whatever you get, add your herd dots to that, and that's what your blood pool is.
Okay. Oh my goodness.
Okay. You're at 5 blood.
Wow.
It's been tough.
Well, if Robert gets any lower, he'll likely go into be dangerous of a frenzy. He will take a sip, stamina, and spend the willpower to keep it down. And of course, the very second he'll mention needing to use the chamber pot in a polite manner. Okay. So you need a stamina roll first?
Yeah. Standard. Okay. 1 success, and you got a willpower, so that's 2 successes. You've got about 6 seconds of keeping this down.
Alright, and he'll smile after sipping and remark needing to use the bathroom as he has held it quite long with the conversation, and he'll take off going towards a chamber pot or loo.
Okay. The Archbishop kind of nods along. He's kind of in the midst of finishing up his own mutton. And so you excuse yourself. And you make it about 4 steps before you know it's coming up right now. And you're not quite out of the party. You're maybe 15 feet at the most away from the table of the Archbishop. And there's a good number of people kind of surrounding these tables. It's a very large room that's very filled with people and very decadent. There's a lot going on. There's a lot of noise. And then there's you, and you're about to throw up kind of in the middle of it.
All right, so perhaps something involving wits to think of a very stealthy way to throw up, perhaps in a plant pot, or do it in a way that is not obvious.
Mm-hmm. Give me a wits alertness, standard difficulty. Okay, 2 successes. Yeah, there's kind of a large column you're starting to pass, and there is a pretty large potted plant, kind of like a big fern-like plant that's popping out. It's very nice. The pot's very large, and you quickly dip your head in between the leaves and vomit up a little bit of blood and this wine immediately. And you just happen to be, in between crowds of people that are just passing each other. No one really cares that there's some drunk guy vomiting into this potted plant. You're far enough away that you pull it off.
Major inner sigh of relief there. He won't instantly return to the table. He'll instead he'll seek nobility there, perhaps, to just carouse with, and if he sees an opportunity to feeding might be way too risky. Yeah, he'll take his time before he gets back to the table. Hopefully everyone will be much more drunk and well fed by then.
Okay. I'm gonna say that you're hungry enough that you're not on the verge of frenzy, but there's too many people here. You can think of little else, and you were able to keep it together long enough to stay on task, but now that you have a second, you gotta feed. You're gonna get increasingly distracted if you don't feed again. If you want to return back to that table and further the discussion.
Okay, is there a I guess a more quiet part where he can just strike up a conversation and perhaps get a chance to feed quietly?
Probably. This place is huge and there's lots of people. There's lots of little nooks and crannies here where people are sitting or talking. Outer walls and hallways where occasionally you see a noble fondling his mistress and in the dim light of candles. So you could ostensibly find a similar alcove or a side hallway where perhaps one of these people is stepping out for a moment. Give me charisma etiquette. Difficulty 5. It's a lot of drunk people. It's pretty easy hunting around here, and you fit in. Alright, 5 successes. Very easy to find one of these women who's stepping out into the hallway. You catch her and chat her up quickly, and you're charming enough and practiced enough that it's not difficult at all to, after a few minutes, move in for the kiss, and you can feed as you would like. I am gonna need a self-control roll. Difficulty 6.
Here we go.
That is a botch. Okay. So what happens is the beast comes out. It's been hungry too long. And this woman is too warm and succulent to avoid any longer. You only meant to take a few points, but you can't pull away and you lose yourself in tasting her. You just keep draining away and feeding, even as her soft and pathetic hands come up to protest. She seems too enraptured and eventually falls limp in your hands. You can regain 10 blood points, but you botched. You didn't just fail. So the beast is going to continue. And you are in a party.
Robert does have one willpower point left. Is there any way he can attempt to regain control?
You can regain control for a turn with the willpower. It might be what makes the difference here.
Then that willpower will be spent attempting to regain control of his senses.
Okay. You have a few seconds of regaining control. This woman's dead, but you know the beast is coming back in just a few seconds, and it's gonna kill as many people in this party at this feast as it can.
Robert is in horror with himself right now. Are we at an alcove?
So the scene is, there's this main party with lots of tables and decorations and major feasts going on in the center, and there's kind of hallways and alcoves on the outskirts that lead off to other chambers of the Westminster Palace. You are in one of these lesser traveled walkways. You think maybe there's gonna be a couple minutes where no one comes through here. Eventually someone's gonna come through here. But
does he have any way to like jump out into the courtyard or some way to just distance himself as much as possible from the others, the kine?
give me a wits. You don't have survival. You can roll a wits survival. It was going to be difficulty 6. Without survival, I'll have you roll straight wits, difficulty 7. Mentally locate a place where you can just get away quickly. One success. It's enough. You recall... Go ahead.
And like, let's see, merit, changes in strategies work at all for this? Obviously, you did not plan to be frenzying at a party.
Change of strategy definitely applies here. I'll give you 2 successes. You recall that just further ahead, further away from this party and following this hallway, it goes into a kind of garden within the Westminster Palace. It's not very large, maybe the size of a large cottage, but it's outside. It's away from people immediately, and you could at least have a second to regroup there, or at least waste the time of the beast.
In that short second, is he able to identify a path to also take the woman's body with him, or would that attract too much attention as he's moving
You don't
towards...
have enough time for that, or enough thought. You just think
Okay.
you're getting away.
Okay, fair enough. His focus certainly will be to head to that area post-haste.
Okay. You rush through the hallway and pass a couple people when you turn a corner and make your way through these doors into the outside. And you find it's a night sky out, mostly obscured by these large trees they've planted here. There's many bushes and actually a small pond inside. It's kind of been constructed. It's very decorative out here and very peaceful. But the beast is coming back. I will give you another chance, since there's no one out here, and you've fed, and you've reduced all the stimuli around you. You can roll another self-control to regain control at this point. Difficulty here will be 6.
Alright.
Two successes. Okay. Now that you're away from the blood and you're fed, and it's the night air. It's cool. You've reset. You feel a little bit more in control. You kind of bring your hand up to your face and feel at your chin and realize that there is quite a bit of blood on your face.
Robert is certainly in horror at what he has just done. He certainly did not expect something of this nature, and as he regains control of his senses, he can only curse his foolishness at not feeding before attending this event. Will this require a degeneration check?
I was thinking about that. You might be low enough where it does not. No, accidental violation, drinking a vessel dry is 6. You're low enough that it won't even matter. Well, killing a vessel in frenzy is level 4, but per the rules, it is standard difficulty, conscience. So roll your conscience, difficulty 6. You are at the level where this would concern you. Any lower and you wouldn't. No successes. You sink further to the beast, as it seems always to sneak up on you. Even when you try your best to control it, it reminds you that you will never truly control it. Your attempts at maintaining humanity will inevitably slide.
Damn, that is low.
Now that you are at 3 humanity, you will be taking increased difficulties to try and blend in to social scenes like you were just in with the kine. There's obviously something wrong with you now.
And does this change appear instantly, or will this be a thing of the future?
This will start to become noticeable over time. It's not an immediate change in your face, but it will become apparent to people that you're more of a predator than a person over time.
Alright, well I suppose Robert knows what he's done is wrong, but he convinces himself that it's not so bad. He can fix this, and he is less completely disturbed by it.
You rationalize all of this away in your mind as you clean yourself up and make yourself a quiet exit from the party before everyone is alerted, and you slink off into the darkness.
He can't very well leave a drained corpse there and just disappear. Is there a way for him to perhaps sneak back and do something about the body there?
You can try. You know it's going to be very challenging. That hallway is eventually going to be walked up by somebody. You probably have less than a couple minutes if you're lucky.
Alright, so Robert will plot out a pathway with the least amount of people. And he will, he'll most likely have to use some aspect of the blood to pull this off. Okay, let me look over Majesty again real quick.
Why don't you give me another wit survival roll, and it will be difficulty 8 since you do not have survival.
Okay.
Okay, 1 success. Thinking quickly, if you saw that there's some unused linen sacks, probably for bringing in some kind of vegetable or some other food product that were left behind by one of the cooks or servants. They were pretty big. You think if you move very quickly, you could stuff her into one of these bags and haul her out. Under the guise of moving some large container of vegetables or some such.
So Robert will do so, of course, leaving to mind all the sickening crunches as he compacts his body to not be body-like in the bag. He will coldly do this as he begins escaping the situation.
You do hear a few cracks and crunches as the body contorts and you break this woman, contorting her to fit into the bag and get her into kind of a small wheelbarrow kind of moving tool with the wheel and start moving her out. You get some odd looks, but no one stops you.
So be it. Robert will seek a quiet place to dispose of the body, perhaps leave it in the sewers. Does the woman bear any Any telling insignias? Perhaps she's of a certain house or anything of that nature?
Upon closer look, it does appear that she has jewelry. You find a silver necklace that she has, and it has a nice emerald in it, and on the back is the emblem of the Yorkist White Rose.
Okay. We certainly will take this piece of jewelry and anything else identifying off of her. And commit her face to memory. In case any news of a missing Yorkist is made news of.
Okay. The necklace was the nicest piece. She had a very nice kind of crimson dress on with a white trim. But there was really nothing else about her that identified her as a Yorkist. And where are you disposing her of?
Is it possible to find a spot in the sewers where she would likely not be discovered?
Once you leave the Westminster Palace grounds, kind of barreling out this bag of something, you do make it to a grate that you think would probably connect to the sewers of the aqueduct.
And he'll go down there and find the strongest current of water and dump the body in there. His disgust showing clearly in this situation of entering the sewer.
Okay, just give me a wit stealth, standard difficulty. Do this without anybody seeing you bring this wheelbarrow to a grate and climb down with it. Okay, 3 successes, and I'll apply your change of strategy here. So really it's 5 successes. You do a great job of being surreptitious, waiting for the right moment, and being quick about it, dragging this young woman into the sewers, her broken, pulverized, and exsanguinated body. And there isn't a big enough current right now for her to catch anything. You need to be storming or almost flooding for that. But it is a pretty dark place, and it'll probably be a very long time before anyone finds her down here. Someone would need a reason to go down here.
It's good enough for Robert. I suppose he'll go the extra mile and just
Chop up the body.
I think he's disfigured it enough. Now he'll. The other identifying thing was the dress, correct?
Yes. She had a very nice dress on.
Okay, yeah, he'll at least take that away and dispose of that elsewhere.
So you're going to disrobe this mangled young woman and strip her of her clothes?
Yes, a horrible act.
I'll be kind. I won't make you roll for it. You're already kind of awful. And I already made you roll for the kill. If it gets much worse, I'll probably have to make you roll for it. So you strip this young woman down until she's completely nude. Of course, she's now a naked, exsanguinated, and completely pulverized young woman. Her neck is bent, obviously backwards, and her limbs are bent forward in a way they possibly can't be. It looks like something horrible happened to this woman, like she was raped and then beaten to death and then pulverized and left in a sewer. That is the scene you have created.
And Robert can't help but start to feel anger as he fully takes in the scene, and even at his rationalization of this away, he definitely is feeling the tinge of remorse at this sight, at the very least, if not the action. But the deed is done, and he believes he has successfully hid his crime.
Alright, so you leave this young woman, whoever it was, into the sewer to rot, naked and exposed to the elements of the sewers for the rats to feed on. Because already they're circling. And you make your way back out into the streets. Do you rejoin the party? You sociopath?
No, it's after this, like, I don't think Robert can bring himself to show his face at the party. He'll definitely return back to the manor. Oh my goodness.
Okay. You return back to the manor after your eventful night. Yeah, for what it's worth, you made good inroads with the Archbishop of Canterbury, and he's invited you to dinner in a couple nights. Meanwhile, Judith, you still have a couple things to wrap up. You had planned on going to Canterbury, is that correct?
That was the plan, yeah. I don't know if she's going to necessarily wait for DeVere, but she would leave word that when she left. So if he eventually came looking for her, he'd know that she'd already departed.
Okay.
But then again, I'm also waiting to hear back from contacts in Wales, so...
Yeah, that was my next point, was you've sent out envoys to seek the descendants of Owen Glyndwr. And let me look at my notes here. Let me see what you get back.
You know, part of the Tudor household or what have you.
And remind me, what message do you give for the descendants? Like, what do you send out?
Mostly just offering aid, given that they'd be dispossessed due to the uprising and still technically considered second-class citizens in England as a whole, even if the household itself is not.
Okay. Do you actually, like, send coin with you, like, as a tribute or anything?
Yeah. Well, specifically aimed at House Tudor, but yes.
And House Tudor, not the descendants of...
Well, Tudor is a descendant of Owen Glenwood.
Why would you be sending out to the Tudor specifically?
Well, because that's just the only house I could find that was directly related to Owen Glenweir. It's literally the only
There's quite a few.
I'm sure there were. It's just the only one I could find any reference.
Yeah, I'm gonna say your envoys will find descendants of Owen Glendower. I'll have to come back to the Tudor thing because I remember reading about that being relevant to the Lancaster's descendant. So I'll come back to that, but they do find some of the descendants of Owen Glendower in Wales. And your tribute is accepted graciously. They reply that... I'll say that, let's see here, I'm looking for a name in particular. Alright, I'm missing the name I want right now, but I have the note I want. So you send out these envoys, and the reply you get is one of gracious acceptance and appreciation for the plight that Wales, and especially descendants of the Prince of Wales, have seen in their country. One person in particular reaches out to you. Descendant by the name of Ocean. He says that you're welcome to come sup with them anytime. You'd be a welcome friend. And this is in... Let's see, let me look at my map really quickly. This is in a place called Anglesey in northern Wales. This Ocean invites you to come and have dinner, perhaps discuss what interest you have in the descendants of Owen Glendower. perhaps their interests align.
Judith would, of course, send word that she is honored by their gracious invitation, and will send word of her imminent arrival at a future date.
Okay. Then it seems like you have an open invitation to join Ocean for dinner at some time in the future in Anglesey, Wales. Probably butchering that name.
It's Welsh. The only people who can't butcher it are the Welsh.
Thank you. I think as Judith wraps that up and eventually starts wrapping up her supplies and begins traveling to Canterbury, that is probably where we will pause it here and end the session and pick it up again next week when I have determined what exactly has happened to Elined. Sound good?
She gets saved by a mummy.
I think she...
If the Elder gives enough of a crap, and I highly doubt he does. And there you go. There's the name of the place in Welsh.
Inisman. Or something.
Or something.
Inisman. Okay.
Something.
Cool. One experience all around. Let's do some entertaining role players. We'll start with Robert.
I say Elined. Going out there to avenge Cormac and playing the frenzy even in a hopeless situation where I could see reason being totally acceptable. But she is sticking with her path, and I think that was great.
Yeah, that was great. That was good roleplay. Elined, how about you?
I'm going to give it to Robert for that dinner party scene. Both everything going so well, and then everything dissolving and going so badly.
I was going to ask which part of the dinner party. Their party or his
It was
party?
an amusing contrast.
It was great. It was a great dichotomy of two very, very relevant parts of Vampire. And Judith.
I think I'm very torn here. There are so many behaviors I don't want to encourage.
It's just about entertainment, not encouragement.
I know, but still. I think I'm also going to give it to Elined. Very much sticking with the I don't make any friends. This is my friend. You heard of him in the neck.
That was really good roleplay. I appreciate that. And I apologize there couldn't be more time for Elined, but want to make sure this is done right.
Nah, it's fine.
Cool. Good game. I think by next game we'll have Scott's replacement character also, so that will be interesting. So if anybody has any questions, chat me up in the week. Otherwise, we'll play again next week.
Word.
All right. Have a good night.
Good night.